Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
All right. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. This is the Provo Municipal Council, a joint meeting with the Provo School District. And we're now at 11:37, Tuesday, September 26th, 2023. We'll do a roll call. We'll start with Melanie and just go around the... We got George Hanley of the council.
Derek Emerson.
You turn it on.
City Council.
Jennifer Partridge, School Board.
Isaac Paxman, Deputy Mayor.
Wendy Dow, Superintendent, Provo City School District.
Catrice McKay, Provo City Council.
Rachel Whipple, Provo City Council.
Meg Van Wagenen, Provo City School District Board Member.
Justin Harrison, Provo City Council Director.
Terry McCabe, Provo School Board.
Gina Hale, School Board.
Dixon Holmes, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming today. Although this is a public meeting, only the presenters and those invited by the council may speak or ask questions unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called on by the council chair. When speaking, please be sure to use a microphone so the record is clear and those attending virtually can hear you. Please also be sure to limit side conversations as they interfere with the audio recording. If you need to have side conversation, please step out of the community room. All right, first, we just have multiple questions that were brought up between the two sides. First, we'll look at an overview and update regarding major initiatives and changes to the Provo School District programs and policies since the arrival of our new superintendent. The current strategies for funding, hiring, and retaining quality teachers. And this will, by Mrs. Dowd, I'm assuming.
Yes, thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us. We are off to a great start in Provo City School District. School has been in session now for over a month and a half, and one of our major objectives is to align our work as a district. We have just been finding that everyone's been kind of working in isolation or in silos, as sometimes happens in larger organizations. So we've tried to unify our entire group. We're all reading the book, The Boys in the Boat, and that is about the 1936 rowing team that won the gold medal in the Olympics in Berlin, Germany. And so we're encouraging all of our employees to read that book and to be part of our Find Your Swing campaign. So that's just been something to kind of build some morale with our teachers and our school district members. Our first major initiative is that we are putting together a strategic plan. So we have hired Insight Educational Group to help facilitate this process. We are in the throes of putting together a steering committee. The steering committee will consist of 28 to 30 stakeholders. Each board member has submitted a list of names, and over half of that committee will come from their recommendations, as well as 2 board members will serve on that. And then the rest of those individuals will be district employees that will come from different places. So not all teachers, not all principals. Will try to get a wide swath of representatives. And then we also have our 2 student board members so that we have that student voice represented. We will engage in that with a meeting each month for the next 6 months. Those meetings last approximately 3 hours as we put together our vision, mission, goals. You know that the state of Utah has adopted a portrait of the graduate. So we would like to kind of pare that down and create something that really reflects the values of Provo City in that process. And then they will do 3 board study sessions with the full board to get feedback. And then there will also be 2 focus groups that will happen where it'll go out to the larger community as we construct that plan so that individuals can provide that feedback before we get the final draft put together. So our goal is to have the strategic plan adopted and in place by April 16th. So we have a lot of work to do, but we're very excited about that process, and that the goal is to really have this be our guide for all decision making for anything from our finances to how we allocate our teaching staff to, what our priorities are as a district. And we feel like that will be kind of our North Star. So we're pretty excited about that. And then just a huge celebration. Every school district is required to have an early learning plan. The state sets one of those goals as part of that, which is that 60% of students in a particular school district have to be reading on grade level by the 3rd grade. We are one of only 5 school districts in the state that achieved that goal. So that's something that we have been celebrating with our teachers and our teaching and learning department. So we're pretty excited about that. It still seems like, why are only 60% of our students reading at a 3rd grade reading level? So we still have a long ways to go. But that is a goal that is set by the state. So in terms of strategies, and Derek can pipe in on this as well, but for funding, really what we're focusing on is trying to put a hiring freeze on entities within our district office, and really ensuring that our support is out in the schools, and that if we're going to be able to save a lot of money through attrition, because one of the things that we know is that our 2 neighboring districts pay more than Provo City School District does. So there are some strategies that we can utilize there as well. We also want to be recruiting our most highly talented teachers into our most at-risk schools. And so at our all-day board meeting on Friday, we'll be talking about some options that we have for doing that. I think our other piece is that teachers need a lot of support, especially our newer teachers, which we have a high number of in Provo City School District. And so plans to make sure that we have the right coaching supports and that they're appropriately aligned and available for those teachers does help quite a bit in the retention piece. And then just really also advertising. I went to a conference with BYU this last weekend, and they've done some significant research with Provo City School District and comparing the median salaries of workers in Provo City itself with our starting teachers. And our starting teachers actually make more than the median salary in Provo City, which still is not, where we want someone to be who's getting a 4-year degree, but there's a lot of misconceptions that are out there, and they provided us with a lot of resources that we can use for just really getting the right information out there. They also did a survey of teachers and pulled those off for the state of Utah, and found that teachers in Utah actually have the second highest level of satisfaction of any employees. The only profession that exceeds that are physicians. And so I think there's this kind of idea that teachers are not very happy. And I think we're working with them to always make things better. But I think there is a lot of flexibility that comes from a teaching schedule. And we need to really capitalize on that and show, especially as we're recruiting new teachers, all of the options that are available, and that we have a lot of different structures and opportunities for them, including getting master's degrees, furthering their education, and really highlighting and capitalizing on that. Our partnerships with Utah Valley University and Brigham Young University are up and running and quite healthy, and we are placing quite a few interns at our schools, and we do have full-time individuals at those schools to help support those individuals, and that's through our partnership with those 2 universities. So we're very grateful for that, but obviously we need to make sure that those individuals are finding ways to stay in education. One of the things we've also been talking about is providing a lower cost daycare for our employees, and just trying to brainstorm, like, is that a possibility, and could we do that so that people don't feel like they have to leave the teaching profession as they start their family, but really being accommodating in those ways. So was there anything you wanted to add, Derek, to that conversation specifically?
Not specifically, I would say that there's avenues that we are looking at in terms of increasing our salaries for our employees. One of them, we will eventually be probably coming back to the city council in a hope to gain support for it. We think it's going to be a great thing for our community and our organization And it's something that as we have the plan more concrete and formalized, then we'll be bringing that back at that point in time. So.
Hello. Okay, we'd like to recognize that Lisa Boyce has joined us from the school board. That was great. I did have one question follow up. You mentioned you're going to do a strategic document. Will that be available to the public for input?
Yes, so that's why there will be 2 focus groups, so people will be invited to that. Plus, it will usually what we do is there's also a stakeholder survey that goes out as part of that. So all of that input is included.
Great. So you don't need to be part of the strategic group to give input.
Correct, because we understand that 28 to 30 people isn't going to represent everyone in that
awesome.
process.
Were there any other questions on these subjects for Superintendent Dowd? Rachel Whipple.
Hi. Is this on? Okay. There we go. I'm really excited to hear that you're looking at daycare options for your employees. Have you already done the work to find out how many of your employees need this kind of service?
Nope, have not. I haven't even approached that yet. The only experience that I do have with this is that when I was a principal in a former district, I did have a daycare at the high school. And so there are some really great options as you combine it with opportunities for students to be getting hands-on career training as well. So there's programs that can be set up that way. So it can be a more cost-effective solution. So if it is something that we need, then that would be something that we would explore. But that was how I stole teachers from from other districts, was because I had a daycare. So I'm optimistic.
So Park City, in their last budget cycle, set aside $1 million to do a daycare for city employees that they were helping set up. And it only created spots, I think, for like 18 or 20 students to be in that. But it was really encouraging to hear that other municipalities in the areas are looking at this as a way to reduce the cost of living in an area so that their people can stay. So they may be good people to talk to.
That's great. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that? Is that something that you as a city have discussed doing? I mean, this is just like an idea we have. We haven't even started on it, but I mean, there's an opportunity. I think maybe we could work together if we both wanted it.
We haven't talked about it yet. This is something that I just learned at the last Utah League of City and Town meetings. And so I'm still learning from our Park City councilors who did that. And yeah, it can be a future discussion.
Is this still on? Is it working? Well, at the last National School Board Association, Megan and I attended a class about how other school districts are doing that across the country. So when we start getting that going, we'll have other ways that other people have done it to use those. Yeah. Yep.
All right, thank you. We're now going to move on to an update on Timpview High School, Shoreline Middle School, and Wasatch Elementary School. Superintendent, are you going to do that too?
I'm going to have Derek.
All right, Derek is going to give us that update.
All right. So currently right now where we're at with our projects is Timpview is, as everybody all knows, a little behind schedule. We had a handful of project timeline issues that arose in the last 6 months. We ended up having to make a few changes, but we believe that we now have the project on a much better timeline track than what we've previously had. We're not giving a definite date yet of when we think it's going to open. I can confidently, I should say, hopefully, I'm going to jinx the project right now by saying that. I believe that we will be in there by the start of the new calendar year, right? That is me saying that off the cuff, though, but there is always potential for delays just due to some of the things that we're up against. Our Wasatch project is currently on schedule to open. It's going to be December of 2024, so we will not be making the start of the school year. And that's due to some concrete delays that we had, the site work that was needing to be done on that property, along with having to redo some of the architectural plans and the redesigning that we had, which caused some of those delays also. So right now we're, excuse me, on schedule for about the December 2024 for the Wasatch Elementary. Shoreline project is running flawlessly. And I'm going to jinx that project.
Deserve that.
But that project is running extremely smooth. And we expect to be ahead of schedule or ahead of the opening for next year. So we do plan on having that school open next school year, and we plan on it being open for the start of the school year. Any questions?
Did you do Wasatch? I missed that.
Yeah, Wasatch is the one that will be opening December of next year.
Okay, so sorry. All right. Well, thank you. Any questions for Derek? All right. Thanks, Derek. All right. On the council, we do our work meetings just like you guys do. And we had an awesome work meeting with Sarah Van Cleve, who's the director of Provo Housing Authority. And Provo Housing Authority also has a nonprofit arm. And in the nonprofit arm, we started to do land trusts. And the awesome thing, I'm going to have Sarah describe it a little bit, but land trusts, what we're looking at is doing a land trust for our police and fire, okay? For workforce housing is the idea, to get the people who work for Provo City in Provo, affordable housing, and give them that opportunity to be homeowners and live in the city where they work. And we thought that it would be a great thing for you guys to hear from as a school board, because Sarah will describe it, but you can be specific about who you include in it, right, Sarah? So can she get your microphone, Derek? And Sarah will just kind of just give a little 5-minute thing on what a land trust is.
Hi. So a community land trust is where the land is held in trust, and then you develop affordable housing on that land, and you in turn sell that property to a homeowner minus the cost of the land. And just to give you an idea, these days land is about 1/3 of the sales price. And what it does is it allows somebody who's on a smaller income to purchase a house they wouldn't normally be able to purchase, and therefore earning equity as opposed to paying rent for a number of years. And then it also allows you to keep affordable housing in your jurisdiction, because not only can you earmark the population that you want to have access to purchase these homes, you can attach resale restrictions so that once that homeowner has reached a level where they maybe want to move on, buy a bigger house, they've acquired equity in the house that they've purchased. Not as much as, like, it's not built to be a windfall. It's designed to do two things. One, build credit. It helps people become homeowners, understand what it is to be a homeowner, and then when they move on, they get enough to generate a down payment on another house, and then that house the house they leave becomes affordable for the next person. Most successful land trusts usually come with donated land, because if you have to pay for the land, somebody has to pay for the land, then you don't get to reflect that savings onto the homeowner. So donated land is a bonus. Hint, hint, hint. If you guys ever come across some land you don't need, we'll take it. And the other thing about a land trust is that you have to maintain records, check people's income, make sure that they're within the income range. And when they get ready to sell, you need to vet that new owner. And to be honest, that is the core work that the Housing Authority does for our housing assistance, our rental assistance programs. We vet people, we check their income, we make them eligible. So land trust is really a good fit for the Housing Authority to administer. So does anybody have any questions? Did I leave anything out? Yeah.
I'm just curious, how do you bypass the anti-discrimination measures of fair housing?
Well,
Discriminating against black.
Well, we're not discriminating. We're just offering a homeownership opportunity for eligible residents. So it's no different than me offering a housing choice voucher to a low income family versus offering a housing option for the, let's say, middle income.
But you can specify that it's for
So, and
fire or police, or
Right.
school board could specify that it's for teachers or certain administrative employees below a certain pay scale.
exactly.
I don't know how it works.
Yeah, so most of them,
You can do it.
the ones that there's one in Moab, there's also one up in Salt Lake City. And the one in Salt Lake City is actually run by the city of Salt Lake. And now they're scratching their heads because they're having to, re-verify income and do all these resale things. And that's not their core business. But we usually set it at 80% less than median income, which usually is where these teachers come in as far as their income limits. So we're not discriminating on a protected class. We're just setting up guidelines that, there's lots of income-based programs though, that we're not eligible for, but there are other people in our cities that are eligible for. So it's just another housing option for a different income limit level. It's called workforce housing. So it's built and designed for that population, that workforce housing. And that's how you get around and I understand what you're saying about discrimination, but it really is set up to serve. And this is how cities bring police officers, nurses especially are really hard. They don't make a lot of money, but they're in high demand. And if they're here and they're not making enough money and they're paying rent, it can be really hard. And I'm new to Utah, but I'm a renter now. I've been a homeowner for 30 years, but I'm a renter now. My rent is more than my mortgage payment of the house that I own. So we're at that cusp where it is almost cheaper if we can get down payment assistance and or free land to do a land trust. It opens the doors for that middle income to be able to purchase a home.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Terry has a question.
Oh, sure.
Bill, many years ago, the city and the school district did something similar, but it didn't have to do with the land trust, but it was very similar. I know teachers, one at Franklin and one at Independence, that own their home for over 20 years now because of the program.
I'd like to recognize that Rebecca has joined us, Rebecca Nielsen from the school board. So we just want to put you guys kind of in touch with Sarah. I think she'd be great for one of your work meetings if you're interested, because this is something that we think could be a huge benefit to keep the important people that we need in our city, right? Police, fire, teachers. We're going to hit up the nurses next. But
creating more housing in the city of Provo.
Right. Melanie?
How many acres are you looking at?
We'll take anything we can get.
Townhomes are a good way to start,
Yeah.
Melanie, where you can do townhomes that they're individually owned. I'm not a developer.
Yeah, it just depends. So there's different ways that you can do it depending on how large the property is. You can have a mixed income neighborhood where you have people that are paying market rate. You develop that housing market rate, then you take your proceeds from that help you offset the cost of the other affordable housing. So there's all kinds of models to that we can follow.
You can start with an acre, right?
Yeah.
Do 4 or 5 townhomes. And that's something. But Lisa?
Incentivize developers to give a portion of their development in your market workforce housing, or is that not?
It is a thing, but there's also loopholes for developers to not do that. And I think that has been a little bit of a pattern, at least where I came from. I'm from Washington. They rather just go ahead and pay the fine and get that market rate dollar amount because the housing market is so hot. So they are working on trying to close those loopholes, though.
We've been looking at the housing stuff for a while as a council, and I know this is one of the things that we're most excited about, and it's been very successful in Park City and other places. It makes long-term affordable housing as opposed to just the one-time sale and then it's gone.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't create a windfall, and you keep that housing in your jurisdiction affordable for years to come. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
curious if council could speak to where you're at in this process, where you envision going, and again, if it's something to partner with, or we would just do our own separate.
I know we're working on some, the mayor is working on some land that the city owns that would make sense for this, to make it for police and fire. So Sarah has the nonprofit trust set up. So, we're going through the process of getting the land. There's some EPA issues, like we're doing some environmental stuff with it. And so, but the land, we know we want to earmark that. So we'll just go through the process, and it's something we'll turn over to the nonprofit arm of Provo Housing Authority to manage for us, right? So the idea is to give the land, and then we've done our part. And then we trust them to go through the rest of the process. And of course, we, as a council or as any other entity, you can set up the restrictions you want, right? For just these sort of people at this salary, or, that kind of a thing, to work your own recruitment and benefit to your employees. All right. Number 3, a discussion on the benefits. Oh, we already did that. Sorry. A discussion regarding student safety on motorized and wheeled micromobility and transportation devices. This was a question that our council had, noticing, I don't know, I live near Timpview. I'm still surprised no one's dead. Between golf carts and motorized, very fast bikes and scooters and one wheel things. And I mean, my own kids could. Am I going to get a phone call about them? I don't know, but it's bad. So I know for ourselves, even in the city, we've been looking at how we need to kind of update our trail rules, right? Because people are using these really fast electric bikes on our trails, which is really dangerous to those who are walking on them and using normal bikes on them. But we're wondering if anything, as a school board, we recognize Travis Hoban has joined us, but we're wondering if you guys as a school board noticed this, if you're worried about implementing policy, or if, I don't know, Derek.
Yeah, so was something that we've currently got on our docket to look into. We recognize that with the current day and age, with the motorized vehicles and electronic bikes and all the other electronic modes of transportation, that there's a lot more bodies whizzing around our roads and sidewalks. And so we have asked our legal counsel to look into a policy to that other educational institutions have implemented, right? And that would make sense for us. We once they leave our property, we don't have jurisdiction over that, and there's nothing that we really can do. But we are looking at a policy and having our legal counsel help draft that, so that way, as this new age of vehicles and transportation arises, we're able to at least keep our patrons safe on our properties.
Okay, as a council, we did just kind of update our policy on sidewalks and stuff. Do you want to go over that, Rachel?
Yes. Are we there? Okay. So we did pass an ordinance to update that policy. Part of this was looking at how private institutions or school district could set rules for micromobility devices on their campuses. Before, it was either all or nothing. And so you could say no skateboards, but you couldn't say you can ride a skateboard if you do it during these hours. Or so by changing our ordinance, we've given you the ability to choose how you will allow these things on your property and make smart decisions for your particular properties. The other thing is we did put a speed limit for using these devices on sidewalks. Not sure how that's actually going to be enforced, but it does exist. And we did note the distinction between sidewalks and multi-use trails. We have a few of those multi-use trails throughout the city, and they look like really wide sidewalks. Some of them have signs that mark them. Some have like a little paint stripe down the middle to help you know what they are. But we are still looking as a city ourselves how we can do this and make those spaces safe for all of our users, especially because many of the people who are using these micromobility devices are doing it on sidewalks because it's not safe enough on the road. We don't have that infrastructure to keep them safe. So until we've gone to that next level where you do have a full safe infrastructure for micromobility users, we're going to continue to have conflicts between them, either with cars on streets or with pedestrians on the sidewalks.
An example of one of those wide sidewalks is 9th East, right? 9th East is a space where kids are supposed to be on their bikes on the sidewalk, not on the road, because there's not a bike lane there. George.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I mean, I certainly hope, and I brought this up in a previous meeting when the construction started, I hope Timpview is encouraging kids to come on active transportation because you've got a major parking problem anyway. But, you know, then it's on the city to make sure, and maybe the school can help, right? Where the message we communicate is that this street is for students to get to the campus, and especially during the crucial hours, and that drivers have to be, you know, extra cautious and safe about it, because we don't want the bikers. I understand a lot of parents, they get these e-bikes and they say, well, go on the sidewalk, it's safer. It's not actually safer to be on a sidewalk because of the ways in which they intersect with driveways, and they can create real problems for bikers, especially if they're on an e-bike and they're going a little bit faster than normal. But anyway, so, you know, I do think I would have personal preferences about what Timpview ought to look like in terms of a lane. We did have that little brief experimental episode that did not go over very well. It wasn't intended to propose certain structures for Timpview, but the current structure is less than adequate, but it's maybe it's adequate, but it's not what it could be in terms of safety for bikers. You know, I wonder if we could consider putting some soft, you know, plastic, I don't know what their terms are for them, but the sort of guardrails that can go along the outside of the bike lane, just to help drivers see that lane a little more clearly. We could probably look at striping it more brightly so that it's more obvious as well. You know, I think in terms of safety, ultimately the bike lane is better right against the curb, and the parked cars are actually on the outside of the bike lane, because that way the bikers can just go and they don't have open doors potentially threatening them, and they have a buffer. But we would certainly love to see kids, you know, using those means. I think it's a positive. I don't see it as a problem. I just think we have to make sure that, you know, the drivers recognize that there are certain parts of the city where that traffic on these mobility devices is going to be more intense, and therefore, you know, we have to be much more careful.
Is there a possibility of, as we've been discussing this, it's made me just kind of realize is there's going to be probably a rise of more and more of these types of vehicles on our roads and sidewalks and whatnot. And we typically have our safe route to schools that are designated, right? Is there some kind of way that we could possibly look at maybe designating a
biking?
Almost biking routes, safe biking routes that are more designated and more, you know, frequent on some of these main roads, and what potentially could that open up in terms of, you know, safety? Because it sounds like we've got kind of, it's either a standard road or it's a safe route to schools. But my guess is that with the rise of these micro vehicles, I believe is what you described them as, is there's just going to be more and more of these routes that are taken on our main roads. So
that's an interesting point. We need to look and see if there is a better way, like the safe routes cover both bikes and walking already. I don't know. Or is there a better biking one or micromobility one aside from where you have to have two designations, so to speak?
Yeah, Timpview Drive is a tricky street for that. Second East is sort of BYU's answer to that. I don't know if you've driven along that, but they have the bulb outs that make it very difficult for a car to go more than 20, 25 miles an hour, which is what you want. That is what the speed limit is on Timpview Drive, right? It's 25 miles an hour. I don't know anybody who keeps that speed limit, but
this is pegged as 25 miles per hour, and it's so wide, right?
yeah.
It's really, I as a driver would probably go faster, right? Because it's,
Yeah, the problem is when you propose that, it immediately, you know, causes, I mean, because everyone knows there's a long line of cars that goes to the school at, you know, whatever time of day it is, 7 something. But it's also sort of a way of envisioning a different alternative, so that for every biker that's getting to school on a bike, that's not a car that's on that street, and that helps. But the safest way is to slow that traffic down, so that and the best way to do that, of course, is to narrow the street a little bit. I mean, even with a bike lane, it might be if we had like, those barriers on the outside of each bike lane, that's an option that could at least visually make the road appear to be as narrow as it actually is, and enforce the idea that a driver does not have access to everything to the right of that bike lane. I mean, we're looking at a picture of something similar right there, right? So if that outer bike lane is better marked with reflectors or rubber barriers than bollards. That's why. Thank you. I was like, what is the word? Vern's here. You should be telling me what to call it. But anyway, that's something I've always thought would be extremely helpful for that.
Sorry, I'll just add, I think looking at Timpview Drive as well, if you go all the way down, it could also benefit our kids walking to Rock Canyon and Edgemont. As we have as a board kind of talked about this, these concerns have come up. I think there's also a piece, we can work on a little bit of an education piece for our bikers and our drivers, kind of what you are speaking to, George. As I think reminding people what, if you are biking on the road, these are the rules you follow, and you are like a vehicle on the road, and how do you signal and those things, and as well as helping drivers know what bikers can do and what they're allowed to, and that they are allowed to be sharing the road. I don't know the best way to do that, like to the high schoolers, right? But I do think we could look to resources like Bike Utah that can help consult and help us kind of with that piece of it if we want, as well as I think, Derek, I know the legal team is working on like I don't know, what would you call it, a mobility policy, but I do think it would be useful to also work with someone like Bike Utah so we make sure we're bringing all perspectives to the table. I think George spoke well to this, of that, we have a car perspective and people in these micromobility devices or vehicles, so that we're making the best decisions to continue to encourage all modes of transportation, because I think we actually all will benefit, right, if more kids are biking and getting to school in ways that's less cars on the road. Cars are dangerous. High schoolers in cars are dangerous. So anyway.
Okay. Thank you. Lisa?
It's on. There you go. Okay. One thing that comes to mind for me, I feel like there's several kind of levels at which we look, or lenses through which to look at this problem. One is policy. So you said you've updated city policy. We're working on, honestly, then with that has to come some communication, because I don't know the policies that probably even already are in place. I should, but I don't know how to tell my kids which of their devices go on the sidewalk and what places and when they go in a bike lane. So there's a piece around communicating and getting the policy information and safety information out there. There are infrastructure pieces to this, looking at, do we have things marked the way we want them to? Do we have, the right carve outs where we want them to be? And that's a lens through which to approach this problem, right? So that as we work towards the future, we are looking towards more people actively transporting themselves places in our city and making our city with fewer cars on the road and safer and friendlier to our more vulnerable people. So on a campus, that's the person walking, because the scooters and the one-wheelers fly by, so they're more vulnerable. On the road, it's our people on our bikes and on our scooters, right? There's also a piece around licensing that I just keep thinking about. Like, I don't know if I'm just going to throw myself under the bus here. I don't know if my kids' bikes are licensed correctly. I don't know what I need to do about that. And I don't know for these different classes of vehicles. Someone was saying, well, that's an e-bike. And someone else is like, that's technically not an e-bike. It's some other word I don't remember. It's like a level up. It goes faster than the e-bike. Like, are there different licensing requirements for these different things? And do people know that? And I feel like that could generate, even if licensing costs $5, whatever, I don't know,
generate some revenue that could go into educating, communicating policy and safety information. And it does start young, you know, growing up in a biking community, we had bike fairs at our schools on Saturdays with cones, and our city police officers were there as well as our teachers and our principal. And we got a little thing at the end and we learned to signal and how to stop. We rode our bike through the court, you know, the thing. And now we've got to think of what's the version of that that deals with the one wheels and the e-bikes and the, what's it called? What's the thing above e-bike? Class 3. All the classes of bikes. Do you know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, as we're looking at this, I feel like we need to be keeping all of those pieces of this puzzle included, because even when construction is done, we want our students to keep moving themselves to school in safe ways. And we want to share the roads safely as a community. I think it's something really awesome about Provo. So I just hope that we have our policies, we put them in place, we communicate what they are so people know. I don't know the speed limit for a scooter. I don't know the speed limit for my kid's e-bike, you know, and so I'm going to look that up and go home and have a conversation. But anyway, I think all of it has to come together, and we all have to be willing to keep this conversation moving into our PTAs, into everywhere else.
Yeah. So you can go to our code. Yeah. 3-32. It's the micromobility is 3-32-170. But that whole chapter is on miscellaneous traffic provisions. It does talk about your bicycle licensing at the beginning. And honestly, I encourage you to do that because that is the number one way to get your bike back if it's stolen, right? For no other reason than that, because once you've got that number with the city, a lot of times bikes get stolen and abandoned. The police end up with all of these bikes. If there's a number on it, you're probably going to get it back.
Back to school weeks, etc. I know in the past year I have sat as just a parent and with a city employee registering bikes as part of bike to school week. So just the more we talk about this, get this one.
Yeah, and we do that every month with Bike Month and everything. You can come here to the police department. They're super helpful and happy to do that with you. But you're right, working together as partners, letting everyone know speed limits 10 miles an hour, things like that are really helpful.
Jennifer Partridge.
Yeah. I think in addition, I think these are some great points and ideas. You know, we can do what we can do with our students, and their families, but the messaging is limited there, right? And so I think working together as a city and a school district I just had visions as Lisa was talking of like a social media campaign where we've worked together, we've kind of made the materials and are sharing similar things so that we can communicate the safety aspect of that. I also think it would be really helpful if this kind of information was discussed at our neighborhood meetings. We have community members who come to that who don't have students in our schools, but they're still traveling on the roads. And we want everybody to be safe around our students, and also helping to message to the parents. I think if we both are messaging like this is how you teach your students to travel safely, everybody needs to hear things more than once. So even if we're telling them as a school district, to hear it in other formats as well would be helpful. So I think neighborhood meetings and those kinds of avenues as well would be a great place to talk about this as a community. It's like community education that we need to do for everybody.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. All right, we should move on. A discussion regarding Shoreline Middle School sidewalk and street safety. I don't know who's doing that.
Okay. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Well, our previous conversation segues perfectly. I think in our last meeting, we talked a little bit about like kind of generally safe routes to schools, why, you know, I think encouraging our students to walk or bike to school can be actually have real benefits. So next year, we know Shoreline Middle School is opening up, and Vern or Gordon, if you guys want to, if there's at any point you want to comment or correct me or jump right in. just, I think for all of us to kind of keep thinking about the streets and the roads on the way to the new school site is really important as we think about ways that our kids are going to get there safely. And I think that hopefully also build a culture where families and kids do feel safe walking and biking, right? I think it's one thing just to have say, well, they can go this way, but is it really walkable in the sense that, it's safe, but it's also visually appealing, there's shade, all these kind of things to really kind of build a culture to help just give lots of different options for us to move across our city, really, right? And obviously we're talking specifically about schools. So I just took some pictures of my own biking around the new school site. And obviously I don't live out here. So if there's something I have wrong, if there's, Gina and Terry, you guys can jump in if you're like, oh, this is the background here. Right here is 1100 West on 6 South. As you can see, we all know that the bike lane doesn't start. So anything east of 11 West there, the bike lane isn't there. So our kids, I guess I'm not quite sure exactly what the safe routes are going to look like. I know they're going to be meeting next month to talk about at Dixon. They'll be talking about the safe routes for Shoreline. And as well as a board, we will be voting on potentially adding some busing to the new school site, even though certain areas are within the 2 miles, 2 mile walk zone. We will be potentially voting on adding some busing to get kids safely across train tracks and Center Street. So I guess the objective is always point out some of these areas. If anyone has a comment, please comment. And then we can kind of just think about some of these areas that could use improvements. So this is 6 South and 11th West. Obviously, right, the school is on 11 West. So I would imagine 1100 West will be a place where our kids will be using to get to school. Do you want to go to the next slide? So this is, yep, nope, you're fine. They're both the same. So freeway underpass, I think potentially some lighting would be beneficial. I mean, this was during the day and it actually looks lighter than when you're looking at it, but it's still, it's fairly dark. Once again, I do think using these roads, right? Obviously when it's flashing, speed limit's 20, 25 miles per hour road. It's so wide that as I'm biking, nobody's going 25 miles per hour on that road. So I just think about our kids using it. Next slide. That's just another view. So this is the other direction of the overpass. My question, we'll see like kids coming, just crossing, I guess that crosswalk there, pretty wide crosswalk, right? Next slide. I'll just go through these quickly because I know our time. Okay, I biked from Amelia Earhart to the new school. So you can see lacking sidewalks here. One thing I thought about, kids coming that direction, so they're coming east. When they get to 1600 West and 6 South is right where Sunset View Elementary is. There's no sidewalks on 1600 West pretty much the whole way up to the new school site. So do kids coming from this direction, we want to get them all the way to 1100 West, which was the first intersection I was showing to get to the school, because there are sidewalks. It's just obviously many kids are probably going to turn quicker on 1600 West than go all the way down to 1100 West. I did speak to a neighbor on 1600 West, and he just said that kids are using that regularly to get to Sunset View, and there's no sidewalks on either side. So next slide. And I'm trying to, so just no sidewalks on both sides. This is, so 560 South turns into 6 South when you're coming from like the Amelia Earhart area. Next slide. And then this is just where 1600 West is, I was just talking about. So right now, like Sunset View, and I know this isn't new information, so but I think it's just helpful for us to be aware and actually see it visually. These crosswalks from Sunset View to 1600 West just dead into like this. There's no sidewalks, right? So if you go to the next slide, that's one of the crosswalks. And then the other side, it's the same kind of thing. And it sounds like kids do regularly use this area to get to and from school. So Yes, the go-aheads were, and that's, it could be another reason, especially not biking on the sidewalk, because you're more likely to hit go-aheads.
So this corner she's talking about is up for sale. There was a whole big property. 2 of the 3 lots have been sold, and they will, be forced to put in sidewalks when they finish building. But this corner lot has not been sold. So somebody wants to buy it. Where'd she go? Somebody wants to buy that corner lot so a teacher can walk across the street. Then that corner would be forced to put in a sidewalk when the construction's finished.
So just really quickly, my daughter started CAS at Sunset View. We live in the Dixon neighborhood. I bike with her. I have a bike trailer with a baby in it. And then my daughter and her friend are on their bikes. And I just want to echo everything that Megan is saying. Like, it's like taking your life into your own hands. When I have to send them they come home without us, but I take them to school. These areas where there's no sidewalk, we have families crossing the street because there's no sidewalk on one side. And then when I'm coming home, I'm on that side, and I have moms with strollers and babies walking in the gravel, and then I'm trying to get around them on my bike, but there's cars whizzing past me. No one goes 25. No one I've seen goes 25, or very few, I should say. And so I just want to echo and tell you that because I do this 3 to 5 times per week, and then my daughter comes home with stories of her life being, she's a little dramatic like me, but, it's not always safe. And then the trains come and stuff like that. So I just want to echo, I do this lots and it's not safe.
Okay, I think I have 2 more slides. Okay, more of the 1600 West, which I was just talking about. Then next slide, I think I just wanted to show, this is just visually 25 miles per hour, this wide road. Right, it's really hard for drivers to go 25 miles per hour. And the next slide. No, that's 6 South as you continue to go towards Center Street across past Sunset View. So here's also looking at the map for the bus zones. It does look like West Center Street, we will have kids needing to cross West Center Street in the walk zone to the new school. So, right here, 1600 West, this is, as you're approaching Center Street. So some more considerations, right? How to get kids safely across Center Street on West Center Street. And then the next slide. Yes, this is just more 11th West, more south. And then, yes, this is south of where the school is. So I do think 1150 may be, a spot where there is some bike lanes that kids could come through. But they may be coming on 11th West beyond 1150 South, which has no sidewalks. And then last slide, this is the one I'm trying to kind of get to. Yeah, okay, so here's just kind of the teal and the yellow are the kind of the potential bus zones that we will be voting on next month. But as you can see in the green zone, am I okay to, I'm just going to point. Is that okay? This is Center Street, right? So that's what I'm talking, these kids are, if there's anyone living there, will have to cross Center Street to get to the new school. And then Amelia Earhart's kind of over here. But those are some of the routes I was talking about, so.
Okay. And so you're still going to go through safe routes with this. It hasn't been done yet, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Along the same lines, I guess, a discussion regarding there's no sidewalk on Freedom Boulevard north of Provo School District offices. If Rachel wants to ask about this.
Well, this is actually less of a concern since we don't have kids walking there anymore. But just a quick question about that. This is the east side of Fox Field. There's no sidewalk there, hasn't been for years. I just noticed recently at the end of the sidewalk, there's a sign in the middle of it that says sidewalk ends. It's fantastic. But this, I don't know why there was never a sidewalk there in the first place when that was
actually part of the high school and was used significantly. And it probably goes to your future plans for Fox Field as well.
Derek, gonna take this one?
Yeah, so we are aware that the sidewalk is not on that east side of the Fox Field. And there is always discussion about what we're going to be doing with that property. And there's always interest in that property. But it would probably be helpful to get something in the plans to put a sidewalk in if we are not going to have anything done or plan to do anything within the next couple of years, just due to the fact that, of that risk that you pointed out. So I think that's something that we can look at to help be cognizant of what is our timeline on doing something with that property versus installing that sidewalk.
So we can't really do anything until Timpview is done because the softball team plays on that field. So when the softball field's built at Timpview, the girls softball team can move up there and then we can decide what to do, if that makes sense.
All right, well, that was it for our agenda. Are there any more questions before we adjourn? So many questions. Well, we could speak afterwards. Well, if there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council joint meeting with the Provo School District by unanimous consent.
Recording stopped.
Oh, we just